Yay.
Hello, welcome to our fourth episode of Meet an Immigrant. This week we have Yvonne Maffei, and I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you for having
And
me.
I want to remind everybody why we're here. This is a series I created to kind of introduce you to interesting people I've met over the years. People I've met from around the country, around the world that have interesting perspectives that have changed the kind of person I am, and I hope will add some value to your life as well. Yvonne, thank you for joining us. I want to introduce you first. And if I kind of like explained in our preview that if anybody is interested in or looking for a home, looking for that comfortable place to be, I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Yvonne has been really searching the country and really the world for that place we call home. And it's taking her to some interesting places, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I hope you enjoy it. Professionally, she's a chef, an entrepreneur, a food and travel writer. She's been an author of multiple cookbooks. She's a public speaker, and she's a food industry consultant for the halal consumer market. You can find her at myhalalkitchen.com and also on Facebook, along with her 1.5 million fans. Congratulations, Yvonne. It's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. We've known each other since the beginning. You picked your wife, and you and me, we've been like a little trio for a long time.
I know. I forgot, like, how did we first meet? Do you remember? Did we I think we must have connected online somehow, right?
Oh, no, I think it was American AMCC conference, the very first one. And I met Pick. And then we started talking about graphic design and working together in that way, and then we just became friends.
Incredible. Yeah. And so, yeah, we've always enjoyed reconnecting with you and hearing your stories, your latest adventures. So, thanks for being here. And I do have to clarify, right? Yvonne was like, but I'm not an immigrant.
So I'm just saying, are you sure you picked me for the right thing?
So I do want to clarify that this is really my intention from the beginning. Like, Meet an Immigrant is really not about recent immigrants to America. Even though the first few guests I have had on were recent immigrants, the main purpose is really to introduce us to other Americans because we are a nation of immigrants. And I think like each one of us has a story to share. Each one of us has a different, we came to this country from a different place. And, some may be more recent immigrants, some may be, here a longer time, but we all have something that we can share, a perspective we can share. And I'm looking forward to adding more and more perspectives to our conversation. So thanks for joining us, Yvonne.
Thank you for having me. And I'm like so excited for you to be doing this. I think you're awesome at it. And I'm glad to be part of the beginning series. So don't forget where you came from when you become big and famous.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have you on multiple times. Thank you. So get us started. Tell us, okay, we know you weren't born overseas. You were born here, but give us some background. Where were you born? Where's your family from? Like, and who did make that trip to America? Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting, how we end up where we are. I was born and raised in small town, Ohio, far from Cleveland, about 35 miles. Some people are familiar with Oberlin College, which is a pretty well-known music college in the world. In our backyard, but I grew up in a small town. Very, nice childhood. Walked to school, Catholic school down the street. I grew up Catholic. Just kind of like quintessential Midwest childhood and upbringing. But my parents came from ethnic backgrounds. My mom is Puerto Rican, although she was born in the U.S., and my father was born in Sicily, but he came to the U.S. when he was just 5. So he came over on the boat with my grandparents. Wow. My grandmother, well, not my grandparents. My grandfather was already in Ohio working, and my grandmother came with my dad and my 2 aunts. So my dad was the little one, and we still have pictures of them on the boat ride over. Wow. And it's amazing to see those pictures and to hear the stories over the years my grandmother would tell about the voyage over and why they decided to come. And it was a topic of conversation my whole life with my grandparents.
What was the message? What were they trying to tell you? Like, yeah, we came here and you better not screw this up. Was that?
Well, my dad was interesting because he, like he felt that immigrant experience, but he was still so young when he came that he was more American in many ways, but he understood the opportunities that were here. You know, he understood the differences in grabbing onto the education and the business and things that you could do here that you can't do. They came from a really small village in Sicily. I mean, it is literally like blink an eye, walk past it, and you're done. It's so small and beautiful.
Okay. Yeah.
But, when a place has no economy that can support, you know, a family. My grandfather was a fisherman and he was in the Navy, and you know, they came for opportunities. They came to take care of their family. And all the rest of their family, pretty much almost all of them, stayed behind in the village in Sicily, and they're still there. A lot of them are still there and doing well, you know, in business and stuff. But you know, my grandparents were pretty much alone in this country, and they hooked up with other Sicilian families and raised the kids with them. So they all were like a group. And I grew up knowing all these aunts and uncles who really weren't aunts and uncles, but they were my grandparents' friends and their kids. So my whole life on that side of the family was very, very Sicilian. And to the end of their lives, they knew English, but really they only spoke Italian to us.
Wow.
So
you're fluent then? You're fluent in Italian then?
No, it was a Sicilian dialect.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not something you can speak in other parts of Italy. And also it was like mixed in with English. So I don't think I would get by with that very well. But somehow we all understood each other. I don't know how that works, but I think that's been a great skill to have going on in life. You know, just kind of having an ear for different languages because they expected, hey, you know, you better understand what this means. And you just walked away knowing, well, I don't think I could repeat that, but I know exactly what she wants me to do. You know? So
did they come? Were they one of those immigrants that came to like Ellis Island and the whole New York thing? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because even my dad's birthday is not his real birthday. They just gave him a birthday, and we're always like, "What day should we celebrate your birthday?" Some of those things happen, but thankfully they didn't change their names or the spelling of their names. So we can like go back, and I've been very interested in the genealogy and going back to the island and seeing who was who and where did we all come from, like, because Sicily was also conquered by so many different people, so it's a fascinating history. Now we have a new history here, so that's just one side of the family. And then my mom's side is Puerto Rican. It was completely different, so but it was a great childhood being exposed to two very rich cultures.
Yeah, they are. So when your father's family came, did they settle in New York, or they immediately move out to Ohio, or
they came out to Ohio because my great grandfather was already working here in the Ford plant, and so most of the jobs were in car manufacturing and things like that. So they all, imagine all this word got back to Italy that, hey, there's jobs, there's good paying jobs in the U.S. And so they came. And then my grandfather worked in the factory, and my grandmother was a seamstress in Italy. And she became a seamstress in Ohio as well. And there was a community of women, Greek women, Puerto Rican women, Italian women, and they all had different specialties of sewing or embroidery. But they worked in the same company, so they all knew each other. So over the years, all these different ethnicities in this small town in Ohio knew each other. They knew each other's families, but they were all in their own neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Like,
gotcha.
Still, it's fascinating. If you go back and you say, I'm from so-and-so's granddaughter, you probably would find somebody who knew my grandparents, even if they're not Italian. So it's really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Puerto Rican side of your family then too. Like, how did they come to the U.S.?
So similarly, my grandfather came to work in the steel mill, and he worked there until he retired, and took care of my grandmother. I don't know if she actually worked. She raised the kids, but my mom was one of 5, and so again, they lived in like a very like Hispanic neighborhood there. And somehow my parents met, and here I am.
And they were in
So
Ohio too. So did they come through New York also, or they just came
no,
directly to Ohio?
Puerto
Or
Ricans were a little different because
okay,
it's not as far. So
yep,
you had a lot of people going directly from the island to this town in Ohio.
gotcha.
There were
Okay,
lots and lots of Puerto Ricans. Still,
wow.
there's still a lot there. But so it was interesting. They actually had family in Ohio. So when my grandparents came, they had relatives already here, and then more relatives coming, and so their family ties were they had more actual family living in the U.S., whereas my dad's family had no
Mm,
one else here at
okay,
all. That was
that's
also
scary.
fascinating to me because I don't know how they did that.
Yeah,
That's why family was like so important
yep.
because we were all they had.
Wow.
Literally.
And it's nice, like you said, the community supported each other, right?
Yeah.
Because it's difficult. I mean, to come here and not have anybody. And so,
Mhm.
like, to have at least some support network in this new
Mhm.
land, new language, new
Yeah,
culture, new way of doing things,
I
you
have a
know?
totally new appreciation for them after
Yeah,
not just traveling, but like living in another country. It's different than traveling, right? And
true.
being a foreigner in a new place that you're not going back to where you were born and your
Yeah,
family was. It's a whole nother
very.
mental stratosphere.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, and you've done some traveling. I mean, have you been back to Puerto Rico? Have you been back to Spain? When did you go?
Mhm.
And what kind of what was that experience like?
So I got the travel bug from my dad, right? When I was very young, he used to always instill in me like, uh, spend your money on experiences, of course,
Mm,
education and investing in yourself, but experiences over stuff.
wow.
And he always
Okay.
encouraged me to travel. Like National Geographic was always in his lap. And, he
Wow.
was always showing me places and saying, see what you can do with money, see what you can do with education. You can go to these places and open up your mind. I mean,
Wow.
if it weren't for him, I don't think I would have had the interest in going.
Wow.
Um, but also, he was the first one to give me a camera and to say take
Wow.
pictures and even pictures of food before food photography was a thing. He would say, "Oh, that looks great. Take a picture of it." So my
Wow.
first trip was with him to Italy, to his village that he was born in. That was
Wow.
my first trip abroad, and
Wow. How
I
old
got
were you?
I was 18.
18. Okay.
So I was lagging behind a lot of people I knew who had already been to Italy or other places, and I was bitten by the bug as soon as I got to. I mean, everybody who goes to Italy, you don't have to be
Yeah.
Italian to be,
Yep.
but I think everybody who goes to Italy gets bitten by the food bug, the beautiful architecture
True.
bug, the art. Italy
Yep.
just takes you
Incredible.
away.
Lots of
Magical.
culture.
Yeah, and I came. So we had a long trip there, seeing family, but we also went all over, Florence and Rome, and had
Wow.
an adventure. And
Nice.
as soon as that trip was over, I went off to college, and then I couldn't stop thinking about traveling. I really just said, what kind of job can I do that's going to allow me to travel? I don't care what it is. No, I cared what it was. But I was saying, like, I want a job that's going to take me
Wow.
to different places because you're always learning when you're traveling. Your mind is expanding,
Yep.
and you get to see how kind of insignificant we are in this world when you really think about it. You get on an airplane and you're just so small in comparison to the world.
Yep.
It really puts you in perspective, puts your ego in perspective.
Nice.
So, but to your question, I
Yeah.
think at that point I started to really want to know my own roots.
Okay.
And going to Italy was one side, but then there was my mom's side. I wanted to know more about
Mm,
Puerto Rico, and it goes further back because her family actually came from Spain at some point.
mm,
So I started learning the language in college, Spanish, and because I knew that was very useful for work and
sure.
also for my own personal interest. And so I went off to Spain in college and Mexico. I studied abroad in Spain and Mexico, and then I did some
Wow.
traveling again in Italy, and I did a solo trip to Italy, Spain, Italy, Greece, France, Switzerland by myself one summer.
Wow.
That I don't think I would ever do again.
No, why? Too exhausting or?
It it was fascinating. It showed me what I was capable of, like I could
Okay.
go after a story if I really wanted to like find something in
Mhm.
another country, I could figure it out.
Mm,
But it's too much stress to be
mm,
alone on trains and watch your money and your passport, and after that, I said, I never want to go alone again. But it was a fascinating trip. So I decided after that to do more like study abroad so I could be around other students. And so that's when I went to Spain to kind of figure out like, all right, my mom's family came from this place.
Mm-hmm.
And Catholicism is kind of like rooted here. And growing up Catholic, I kind of wanted to know more. So there was a program in Segovia, Spain, which is where it's the town where Queen Isabella was crowned. And it just has a fascinating history. And so I grabbed that opportunity to go there and to learn the language and to live, down the street from this amazing castle that was there. And, that was the start of a lot of other things. So
what town was this then?
It's called Segovia. It's north of Madrid.
North of Madrid. Okay.
They're famous for their Roman aqueducts and this fairy tale castle that is where Queen Isabella was crowned, and also where Walt Disney kind of got the idea for the Disney castle. It really is like that. It's just beautiful. Wow. But I didn't know much about I knew somewhat of the history of that part of the world, but to really know like the deeper history of the conquests in Spain, of like, how the Spanish were able to like conquer Latin America. This was all part of my own personal history, right? So I really kind of wanted to understand it better. And I wanted to understand even Catholicism because I grew up in it, but I didn't feel like I really understood the roots of it because there's so many different branches of Christianity. And I had friends from all different types of Christianity. So like, it was just a way for me to expand my mind,
And what did you learn? So like, how much time did you spend there, and kind of like, what were the main take-home messages for you?
Oh, it was a fascinating place because, you're surrounded in so much history and people who are willing to they know it and they talk about it. But I had one professor who was pretty awesome, and he was a history professor, and he just kind of gave the lowdown of the history in a very unbiased way. And because Spain has so much of this Moorish influence, that's where I kind of learned a lot of it from him. And he took us to Toledo, where the Jews and Christians and Muslims kind of lived harmoniously. That was fascinating for me because I didn't really know anything about Muslims at the time. I knew about Judaism, but I really had no, if you ask me about what a Muslim believes, I was like, I thought they're more like Buddhists, to be honest. I didn't know.
And it's true. I love that. I
wasn't raised by any Muslims. I had no idea. I just knew they don't wear shoes in the house, and I thought that was similar to Buddhism.
That's an interesting insight. I like that. I see that connection. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So he took us to various parts of Spain to show us around and show us the influence.
And how long did you spend in Spain then?
So it's 3 months, and living and studying in that town, and then traveling to like Toledo, and then down south to Andalusia. Well, that we did on our own. Like my friends and I went on our trip by ourselves, and we got to see, I think Sevilla. Okay. And I was fascinated by the university there because someone had said, oh, that there are books in here in Arabic and Spanish, and I was like, Arabic.
Yeah, what's that doing in Spain?
I didn't know this history, and so then I was intrigued about going to Morocco because Morocco's very close.
Yeah, it's true.
But it is in relative terms,
It is. It really is.
So I was like,
straight. The straight.
Why not?
You went. Huh? So this was not part of the whole plan. You just like, I gotta go. I gotta check it out. We're here. It's right there.
Yeah. He put this, curiosity in my brain, and then I'm like, I'm like that kind of person. If I want to know something, I would just go for it. Like I have to know what happened.
What made you curious? So is this like, this kind of Arab, North African, Berber, Islamic kind of civilization that existed in Spain? There were books written in Arabic, like. So now you're kind of like pursuing those roots even further. So your Puerto Rican mother came from Spain. You were exploring those roots and the Catholic roots, and then
they had to come from some diaspora to be in Puerto Rico. So I don't have proof of any of that. I just in my mind, I come from, my parents are from 2 islands that were very blended and mixed. So
good point.
I think when you I know that I'm never going to get 100% accuracy about my genealogy, but I think it's fascinating to find out clues, about who you are as a person, and that now we have the DNA stuff and all that. But back then it was my mind saying, well, most of the people who are in Puerto Rico, I knew some bits and pieces of my mom's side, and I knew that they had some Spanish blood. But then I said to myself, well, then if they were kicked out of Spain, then they must have been either Jewish or Muslim. So I don't know. It's just a deduction I made, but it was nothing, so it was an excuse for me to explore further, just to kind of say, well, this is curious. I'm just interested in, who these people are. And, our professor had told us so many interesting things about this Moorish influence and how, they were kind of pushed down further out of Spain and into Morocco. So I thought, let's go to Morocco.
So what was that? You're too funny. I love that. That's incredible. That's incredible.
I mean, I can be, especially back then when I was in my 20s, I think I was even more naive about everything. And I was kind of fearless, and wow. I wish I had a little bit of that fearlessness now, but thankfully nothing bad ever happened to me. But I'm pretty smart about choices. But, I turned to a friend and I said, let's go to Morocco. She goes, we cannot go by ourselves. We have to go with the groups. We got the whole group to go with us. I recruited everybody. Come on, let's all go. So about 10 of us went, and that just sort of planted more seeds in my mind about, okay, when we arrived, because there's a boat you take from the tip of southern Spain to Tangiers. As the boat was pulling into the port of Tangiers, I just remember hearing this beautiful melody, and I didn't know that was the call to prayer. Years later, I find out, okay, this was Friday, which is a Jummah, which is a special day for Muslims, and it was also the holy month of Ramadan.
Wow!
So, because while we were there, nothing was open, no restaurants were open. So of course, me, the foodie, goes and there's no food, but we had a very nice guy named Ali, and he said, don't worry, I'll make sure you guys eat. And I'm like, what do you mean you'll make sure we eat? Isn't there food? And I'm sure he explained it, but it probably went over my head at the time. And
well, I mean, you should explain, because not everybody will understand, right? I mean, so this is Ramadan, which means that people are fasting from sunrise to sunset. So until the sun sets, I mean, this is a majority Muslim country, right? I mean, so the vast majority aren't going to be eating during the day. And only until sunset will there be restaurants open and people eating all night, right?
And the Catholic, the Catholicism I grew up in, with Lent, where you're not necessarily fasting, but you're not having maybe meat on Fridays. That was the extent of fasting that I knew. So I didn't imagine that they would not eat. And also, it was just, I still have images in my mind of that trip, and like walking past the masajid, the masjid, the place of worship. And there were hundreds of shoes outside. And I'm thinking, Buddhists. They're Buddhists.
It just confirmed everything you believed, right?
Everything I believed. I said, oh, okay, I get this. And then later on, I'm like, no, but I was a little confused, but the pieces of the puzzle started to come together as I talked to people. Okay. And, because my idea of Muslims was what I saw in the newspapers, and it was never very positive.
No.
So I was always told, you stay far away from that and far away from those people. But this trip showed me the nicest people I had ever met. The kids were speaking 5 languages to me. Are you Spanish? Are you Italian? They could speak to you in every language, and I just thought that was amazing. So I walked away a different person from that, and that made me open to like study Islam, or I didn't study. Actually, I wasn't looking for anything theological. Just on a social, personal,
human
food. No, I wanted to know more about these people, and how they lived. I like to know how people live. I think that's an interesting.
So did you figure out at this point that there was any connection between Christianity and Islam on this trip, or was it still like very a superficial thing, like just on a human level you were connecting with them?
Well, that's a great question, because through this experience with the history teacher, the one takeaway that I really had was Islam is monotheistic. I didn't know that. I assumed, again, Buddhism. I thought, and even Buddhism, like, that's technically not monotheistic. I mean, technically is monotheistic, but we don't know those things unless we really dig deep. And I just kind of brushed it off, like, just Christianity and Judaism are the only monotheistic.
Mm.
But again, I wasn't really looking for
Spiritual
religion.
stuff at that point. Yeah, exactly.
No, I wasn't. So when I went back to university, I was open instead of being scared and afraid of Muslim people. And I can honestly say, before that, I just really
Was afraid, right?
that's all I did. I never engaged. It's not that I never had the curiosity, because I figured that's them and this is us.
Yep.
And shameful to say that now, what you don't know, you don't know, right? Travel makes me different.
And that, as you're speaking, you totally remind me of that Mark Twain quote, right? It's just so that travel is fatal to prejudice or something like that, something to that, meaning.
Yes.
I mean, you're forced to see real people, and it's like, oh, I had this preconception, but that's not true. And it works in all different directions, right?
Yes,
I mean,
it does.
We human beings, we it's just a natural inclination we have to put people into boxes that make it easy for us to understand the world. But usually those boxes are not very sophisticated, and they don't leave a lot of room for nuance. But when you do interact with other people, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this show, is like all that somebody sees you, first thing, oh, you're Muslim, you must be Arab or maybe Turkish or Bosnian, or, you have this, you don't have Muslim heritage at all. I mean, typical Muslim heritage, right? Even though there were Muslims in Sicily, there were Muslims in Spain, right?
Maybe in a way I am kind of reaching back to my roots. I don't know. But again, at the end of the day, every culture wants the same things for their kids, for their families. What it seems so simple, but what I saw in all of this was everybody just wants a nice home. Everybody wants to put their kids into a nice career, education. People want pets. People want, nice food and dinners with their family. The basic stuff is all the same, but just packaged slightly differently.
It's beautiful.
And I think, it's funny to say that, you have to go thousands of miles away to realize it, but I did have to kind of get out of my box. And
we all do. Even Pick and I mean, when we traveled around, it opened our eyes to reality, right? And the funny thing is, for us, I think in some ways we appreciated America more than we ever did before, right?
Definitely.
And sometimes you idolize, oh, these countries are so great. You go there, I was like, oh no, they have problems too. There's problems everywhere.
I know this from a lot of people who go places. Like when you leave the U.S., you idolize a lot of the things in the U.S., but when you come back here, I know I feel really kind of spoiled here, and I start to really miss some of the simpler things that I've seen in other countries. Human nature to sort of never be satisfied. It's sort of now it's the age of picking and choosing what's the most important stuff. To what are the priorities? When you're younger, it's different than as you get older, and you realize certain things just aren't that important, and it's different for everybody. But certainly I don't think it's done. I don't think I feel like there's so many places I'd still like to see.
I agree.
But there's certain places where if I had to be quarantined or and could never leave, I would be totally fine. In other places I say no, get me out. It just depends, where for everybody.
So tell me, you've did this traveling. You came back from Spain and Morocco. Yeah. So when you came back, were you the same person? Were you different? A lot of times when we come back to where we came from, we just kind of fall into our old routines. We become the same person we were before. But did something stick? Did something change you?
When coming back from Italy was the biggest change, because I got to see something about knowing where your family is from and the food and making sense of your family structure and your family culture and customs. For me was very important, because my family didn't always talk about stuff. They just did it and kind of expected you to be on board, You really need to get on board with this. But I was always asking questions. I wanted to know, and you have to be there to get it. And that's true. So I understood my grandparents better. I understood my father better. I understood my family structure better. Same with going to Puerto Rico. So that changed me the most. And then going to Morocco was a different turning point, because it kind of gave me a little bit of a spiritual awakening. Wait a second, there's a totally different perspective on people that you see in the media that's not reality. And I was interested in journalism at the time, so that was important.
Okay.
And that from there, I just started to be open again, like I said, to people. I had made friends from Lebanon and Palestine and Malaysia, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE, all the Muslim countries, Indonesia, and they were just fascinating people to me. Very different foods and ways, but they all had the same faith and practiced a little differently. But they were very generous with their information. I would ask a ton of questions, and so over the course of many years, I kind of developed this sort of really strong liking for Islam, but I wasn't really interested in. I wasn't a particularly like super religious person or interested in like a new philosophy to believe in. It really wasn't that. It was just kind of a lot of moving parts came together, and I really sort of was more attracted to the family structure that I saw in Islam than anything else.
Oh, interesting.
It's something I saw kind of slipping away elsewhere, and I thought there seemed to be, this like stability of family that was really important to me. And my parents had divorced, so it was a kind of a difficult time in my personal life. So I think then it was the food. I started reading Quran, and there was all this mention of food and health, and became very interesting. I think everybody kind of grabs onto something that they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
So maybe I was ready to absorb something like that at that time, but it took a long time for me to actually know what was happening. I really didn't set out to become a different religion. It's not.
Yeah. And so, okay, now, it's obvious you're a Muslim now. So at what point did that transformation happen? Like, how old were you? So you did this traveling to Morocco in college, right?
Yeah.
And so was it during college that you're like, you know what? I kind of like this faith, or it wasn't. When was it then?
No, I was just still learning. I found it fascinating. I thought maybe it's just my journalism mind, my curiosity never ends. Okay. I mean, I really just played it off as that. I moved to California for a year. I worked, and then in that time I traveled all up and down the West Coast.
Wow.
I was just a travel bug. I went to Mexico, and I really thought I'm just going to pursue this travel writing. Like, so I was working full time, and then on the side, I was doing the hustle of writing for websites. Websites had just started coming out.
Yep.
And so I was doing some freelance writing for travel websites, and I was trying to get teaching jobs back in Italy. So I was, again, taking journalism courses, teaching English as a second language courses. I mean, I was like the definition of hustle we see today. I was doing that in the 90s.
Awesome.
And, because I thought I was going to take this path of like going abroad, and then I ended up moving back home. It was really a weird transition. I ended up going back home, and I don't know, it's kind of like the COVID time, but it's something you feel in the air. I can't explain it. I got a job. I was teaching Spanish at a school, and at the time I was really starting to think very deeply about the future and family.
Okay.
Is this really a good idea to be globetrotting? And maybe I should be more settled of a person and be closer to my family. Well, I ended up taking my Shahada and becoming Muslim. So it was a really I was ready, but I don't know how, I was ready, but I wasn't, I was like, I better do this now or never. Like, I just felt it was the right time. But it turns out a month. So I did this at my school. I talked to my principal about, I'm going to be wearing a headscarf, and a lot of these changes were coming, and he was great with it. He lived in Egypt, so he really gave me a place to pray, and it was really nice.
Wow.
A month later, 9/11 happens.
Oh no.
So it was a very chaotic time, but I think it was good. It was good that I was home, it was good that I was around family, and because the local masjid that I, was going to then said, can you help us like educate the public about Islam? And I'm like, what? You know?
Now you became a spokesman for Islam after a month. Was it 2 months? What?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically I was ready to talk about the basics, but you get into politics, forget it. You get into higher theology. I'm not, you know,
Yep.
I'm not going to claim that I can speak to that. I was like, how about food? I'll make some food. So, you know, one thing kind of led to another. And then, you know, things settled down a little, and I went to Chicago a few years after that, teaching English for a few years, and then saying to myself, I got to get back to this writing thing. And I think traveling was just not an option at that point, but I was kind of bursting with something I needed to do. And, you know, I always think about my parents, my grandparents, you know, how much they fought for us to have a good life here. So I can't waste time. I feel like guilty if I'm not doing something meaningful or good with my time, you know. And it was a hard experience because I'm, you know, new to this religion, new to the Muslim community, and my parents and family are kind of like, what just happened? You know, your daughter becomes Muslim and there's 9/11 all at once. I mean, I didn't plan that, you know. So, gosh, it was tough. Like, looking back, I think I give them credit for hanging on to things, and they weren't, you know, there were some really.
I'm sure it wasn't easy for them, especially after the attack. You know, I mean,
No.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, you talking about writing, Mitra says, Yvonne, I love your books. So that was a very good choice to get back to writing. And is that what did you start doing at that point then? So now, you know, post 9/11 world, you know, you accepted Islam, your family's adjusting to that reality. Your school has been very supportive, even asking you now to talk about and represent Islam. So where did you go with this?
Yeah, the school asked me to, you know, set up a whole booth on Islam for the kids. You know, and looking back, I'm so grateful that I was surrounded by such brilliant people and kind people who knew, like, okay, this isn't about your average everyday Muslim. We need to just kind of educate people on the real tenets of the faith and the majority of Muslims and how they practice. So thankfully, they were so great. And also the local mosque, you know, had asked me to do all these things. So I think that was good for me to kind of relieve some stress, to be able to talk to people rather than, and I did do some writing in newspapers and stuff at the time, you know, correcting things I found that were very off in the newspapers. I would write in and say, hey, can we correct this, please? Because one thing I did learn in journalism is that, you know, like news travels fast and it can be deadly. You know, wrong information kills. It can.
And we saw that in the years following, you know. So you know, but that's great. I mean, you were doing what you could with, you know, your voice, and that's awesome. And so continue, please.
Then when I was in Chicago, I became a teacher. So I had this teaching English as a second language degree, and I was having trouble getting any work in teaching there because I had a master's degree, but not a teaching degree.
Gotcha.
So I ended up getting a job at an Islamic school.
Okay.
They were like a all girls school, and it was like walking into another country. They're mostly Pakistani, Indian, and I found it fascinating. I'm like, I can't travel, but this is so cool. Everybody here, you know.
You found a way to travel inside of Chicago, huh?
Yes.
Global travel.
And I got to have biryani for lunch every Friday, so it was really awesome. And there was a Quranic school inside, so the girls were memorizing Quran, and so I got to study a little bit too. But the best thing about this place was I had the freedom to teach however I wanted. You know, it was no curriculum. They were like, you build the curriculum. And so I did. And what I did was incorporate a lot of geography and geography projects for all of my students. And they still if you talk to any of my old students, they will still tell you about it, because this was my way of giving back what I had been given, this love of different places and different people. And at the end of the project, I told them, no matter what country you have to turn their national cuisine into a halal national cuisine, and you have to bring that to school. So from Brazilian to Peruvian to French, they made whatever was like a national dish and then brought it in. So if it had ham in it, they made it like with chicken or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, I was like, how do I make this halal? So I have to. Turns out, the kids were fascinated with this. And I, over the years, found out that, they wanted, to try. Some of them had never had avocados. Some of them had never had like lasagna. And I'm like, okay, we need to change this.
No lasagna. This is an injustice to the humanity.
And you are not allowed to say that certain Italian restaurants are Italian, because they're not. Okay.
We won't mention those names. Yes.
We won't mention those names. But I started doing some cooking classes for them too. So I'm like, this is so fun. I enjoyed myself so much, and the kids enjoyed. But I was really quite tired from a few years of really intense teaching. I really needed a break. So I took a break. But of course I couldn't take a break for too long. And it somehow came into my mind. I had a student who was one of my students was teaching me Arabic. Okay. And one day she sends me an email, and so she says, turn your homework in on the blog. And I said, what?
What's a blog?
Turn my homework in a blog. Why are you giving me something like that to do? I don't understand. And I was so discombobulated by the technology. And I was like, can you please come over and show me what you want me to do? She was so kind. She came over and she opens the computer. I will never forget this day, because that's where my halal kitchen started.
I was thinking this sounds like an origin story happening here.
Yeah, and she's so humble. She will probably never, take credit for this. But Charmaine, if you're watching, it's all you. She came over and she opened the computer and she said, this is a blog, and this is how you just type comments. And I'm like, well, where did this all come from? And she said, oh, you can just make it. You can just open it up and write. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You can publish your own stuff? And she says, yeah. Where have you been? Like, so I was floored. After that, I was like, okay, I don't think I can do Arabic right now.
What year was this? What year was this? Let's just put it in context.
Around 2007.
Okay.
Right before the financial crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't remember exactly how many hairs I pulled out trying to get a blog. This was like way before, I think WordPress was WordPress.org. Yeah. I don't know what I put out there. I put something out there, and then I called my mom and I said, Mom, here, check
out my website.
This thing. And she was the first one to make a comment. As all bloggers will tell you, your mother is the first one. Such a nice blog, such a nice picture, honey. Good job. And one other random stranger lady said something about a yogurt recipe that I was like, oh, if one person likes it, then maybe, more people will like it. Yeah. And so I just, for me, it was personal, because I was trying to get back to myself. Like, I felt like I missed an opportunity to do travel writing. And I was really kind of mad at myself. I was really sad and mad, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I said, well, how do I bring food into this equation? Because most Mediterranean food has wine and pork, and all those people, they're off on trips and they're sipping wine. And how am I gonna go to Italy now? How am I gonna, I was woe is me. I was feeling sorry for myself. I was saying that there's no way out and no option. But I couldn't get this obsession out of my head that I have to do this somehow, some way. But again, remember, publishing before blogs was querying magazines and newspapers. Yep. And I had worked for a couple of websites, when I was in California. But for those years that went by, I kind of missed out on the technology that happened in between. So I felt really lost. I felt hopeless and lost. And when I heard, about this opportunity to blog, I said, if I don't jump on this now, forget it. I'm never going to get my dream going. But at the same time, my dream took a different shape, right? Yep. And I said, truly, it has to come from the heart. I have to write about something that I can sustain and that I will like. And the truth was that, there's power in the pen. And I was in between a Muslim community that I wasn't 100% like everybody else. And also my family now, there was a huge bridge or gap there. So I felt like writing could help everybody understand what I was trying to say.
Wow, that's powerful.
yeah, I really, I wanted everybody that I cared about to
To
understand.
understand the other side, right? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that was really, really important to me because I love my family and I
yeah,
didn't want food to be such a tension between us
yeah,
because it was becoming that. Like, what are you eating every time you come here? You know, like,
yeah.
and I'd say, well, I can eat anything as long as it's halal. And they're like, but it's not. We have to go get kebabs from a Middle Eastern restaurant. We don't know what you want. And so I I hadn't really articulated that for them. So that was my fault. But in my blog I could do that, right? I could say, hey, we can make meatballs, but it just this and type of things. And then for the Muslims who were loving all the halal stuff, they could get exposed to things that they had never seen before. So it was exciting that I could, kind of bring everybody together and they didn't even know it. They were all coming to the same table.
Funny. I met like, one time I was speaking to some Indian Pakistanis and they were saying like, yeah, I've never had lasagna. Like that wasn't because like I think her mother made her some, but
Mhm.
it was like with garam masala, right? It was like, it
Oh,
had the spices in it. And then like, and you're right. I mean, people do crave the authentic, real thing. And it's true for the Muslim community. A lot of them can't appreciate a lot of cuisine from maybe Italian restaurants, is because there is a lot of wine there, there might be
yeah,
pork in there.
it's the restaurant thing. That's why the home cooked stuff
Yeah,
is awesome because you can make it how you want.
yeah, yeah,
And
that's beautiful, and
you're
you're
gonna get,
sharing that. That was
yeah,
beautiful. That's
yeah,
awesome. So tell me, okay, so you have that whole experience. So most recently you went to Turkey.
yeah,
Tell me about that. Like that's kind of like your most recent travel. What
yeah.
was that like? Tell us.
Oh, I'm utterly in love with Turkey. I think,
Wow.
as anybody could say, I think wasn't it you that said you're writing way too much about Turkey these days? What's going on? It was before I went, right? I utterly, and I think I'm not the only one. I had a similar experience going to Italy. Like the first time I stepped into Turkey, I don't know. Something's in the air. I just fell in love with it. I don't know if it's the naturalness, the earthiness of
Hmm.
things. Istanbul is like the most magical city on earth to me, but I'm not really a city person. So I looked around, went to different parts of Turkey and found a spot that I really loved. And it was, to me, I call it the Muslim Italy in some ways because it's very similar to
Yeah.
Sicily and southern Italy, but obviously you hear the adhan, there's masajid all over the place, but
Lots
um,
of cats.
different cultures. I mean, there's lots of Catholics or Christians that live there, expats
Yep.
from the UK and Germany, and so I never felt that I was a foreigner
That's like
there.
Mitch also sharing that how she lives Turkey and lives that it's a Muslim country but very modern too.
Very
Um,
modern. People don't, I felt like I was so surprised that people don't they don't bother with you. Like no one says to you, why are you wearing this or dressing like that? Or, no one, if
no
you wear
judgment.
it or you don't, no one
Oh,
puts
good.
themselves in that.
That's
It's
nice.
that's really nice as a woman, like you just don't feel bothered by those things.
Yeah,
People
it's a good point. So, do you feel like in America, do you feel like you're judged for wearing that, and then in some Muslim countries, you feel like other women who don't wear a headscarf are also judged harshly?
honestly, I think sometimes it comes more within the community than
Yeah.
outside.
Gotcha.
I can't speak for other Muslim countries because
Mhm.
I've been in Dubai with hijab, but that wasn't an issue. But I don't know about other countries. I think it just
Okay.
happens within the community. But Turkey
Mm,
was a very totally different case.
mm,
I mean, I felt like no matter what, I would feel comfortable there. That's
right.
different than I do feel in the US. I think that's just a different type of tension in the air. But
Yeah.
Turkey's more laid back in general. It's just a more relaxed. Like I feel like I can go down like 20 notches when I'm there,
That's
and
awesome.
that's nice. That's nice, and the food.
I
There's
remember you
nothing.
told me when you used to call back home to relatives and family and friends in America, there was this regular theme that would come up that you'd actually notice being there. Do you remember what you told me?
Theme I noticed. No, I don't remember what I told you.
You said every time I called America, everybody was like
Oh,
shopping.
oh,
Right?
yes. Yeah,
Interesting
I
insight.
realized I had an addiction here, which was to shop. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm the least, interested in shopping of a person you could find. But apparently, when I got there,
Uh-huh.
for an entire year, I think I complained that if this place just had a Target, it would be, or TJ Maxx. I think I said TJ Maxx. You know,
Control.
the Turkish people would love it too. All these women, they would love TJ Maxx here. And later on in the year, I found out that Walmart is, I think, opening up over there. But
Oh
um,
no. Oh
I don't
no.
like that idea.
Not as happy anymore, are you?
Yeah, because then it feels a little. I mean, nothing wrong with Walmart. It's
No.
just that you want things to feel more like when you're in Turkey, they're Turkey. When you're in the U.S.,
Yeah.
it's the U.S. But that totally knocks off my
Defeats the purpose
idea.
of travel. Yeah.
But again, I realized that was my addiction. I think
Interesting.
to feeling like I need to like decorate the entire space. And when I realized I actually had more room to live there, I had more room to breathe, and I spent a lot of my energy in focusing on the more important things, and really taking in the surroundings, the nature that's there, the food. Going to the market was like going to a botanic garden or something.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
like Italy, it's the same smell. The tomato, like when I walk in the market,
Mm-hmm.
you get this woof of the tomatoes that just
Yeah.
comes at you. And my recollection is my grandmother making tomato sauce every
Wow.
summer, and also smelling the tomatoes in Italy. I felt instantly at home there because I was like, I feel comfortable here, and there's that food that makes you feel secure. I don't know what it is, but like I just felt like you can never go hungry in a place with food
Mm.
growing everywhere and people being very generous with their goods, and they're growing things for you, and it's just, I don't know.
More
It's
real, huh?
yeah,
Down to
it's
earth. It's funny, like
really earthy. Turkey is
I,
very earthy.
I grew up, in rural upstate New York. And so my parents would have a garden every summer. And the funny thing is, you eat cucumbers from a garden, you eat tomatoes from a garden. They're so delicious. Just,
Yeah,
like you said, you can smell it just
yeah,
by holding it. Like the scent just emanates from it. Right.
yeah.
And when you go to a grocery store, it's a very different experience. And then you eat it. It's like, it doesn't
Mhm.
have flavor. It's kind of spongy, rubbery compared to
Yeah,
the real thing. And we have, the advancements have been incredible. We can feed a
yeah.
ton of people, but you have to transport these things long distances, so they can't ripen. And what you realize is nothing, like as far as quality goes, nothing replaces like fresh off the vine, like truly fresh off the vine, right? They picked it,
Yeah,
less than a mile from there. They brought it to the market, and now they're selling it, right? Fresh off the vine. It's
yeah, yeah.
incredible.
And this is sort of the conundrum we have, right? Especially anybody whose recent relatives may have come from another place. You can always idolize the other place for being what it is. People there say that they want to come to the US, they want the opportunities. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, we have all this nice food, but we want better salaries, we want businesses, and we want.
Yeah.
And maybe those of us here, I know myself included, was just really worn out, really burned out, really tired of the rat race. And so everybody's, maybe grass is greener,
On the
or you
other
need a
side. Yep.
balance, or I don't know what it is, but maybe we go towards what gives us a little bit more equilibrium, you
Hmm.
know?
It's a great insight. It's true. And it's funny, like on a smaller, scale, like when my wife and I moved from the East Coast to California, we were like amazed by the sun. Oh, it doesn't rain. It's so sunny all the time. And then after a year, we're like, oh my God, I miss the clouds. I miss the rain. I never thought in my life I would say those words. Never.
I know. Fethiye's summers were so hot and intense. I was really saying, "Oh my God, right now, I wouldn't give for like snow and overcast because I was so hot." And then I really, gosh, what is wrong with me? Be grateful for what you have. But I think it's
Easy to say it, but
easier to say it. We all, and that's human nature. I think we always, too much of a good thing sometimes is actually spoils us. So, I look back at my time there, and I think gosh, it's such a special place for me in my personal life, because I knew the moment I stepped there that it was a place I wanted to live or build a little life at, even if it wasn't all year round, but like a place that I would go to get a break, maybe do my writing or something. You know, I really was looking for a spot to have some peace and quiet and to just like do my work. But it doesn't mean it has to be forever. It doesn't mean it has to be all the time. But it's important for me to feel something about a place, you know.
And tell me, like, you know, that experience, did it change you? Did you bring something back to the US? A bit of Turkey, a bit of that, the values, their lifestyle, or again, you know, or did you go back to shopping at Target all the time?
No, I think I'm so like, I feel ashamed of myself, you know, to have been so, you know, spoiled like that. Like what the heck, you know, I thought I really had things in perspective, but I think what Turkey taught me was frugality, is good in that, you take what you need and leave the rest, you know. They're like,
Nice.
I see that, food is simpler. It doesn't have to be crowded with all kinds of stuff. My cooking has gotten really pared down to essentials. I don't go crazy with 10 types of cuisines like in my pantry. It's kind of given me permission to edit and to be a lot more minimal.
Nice.
And I know, like, you know, housing is different there, right? You walk into a lot of homes and they don't have closet space like we do. They don't have garages and all of that. But honestly, I felt less stressed because of all that. I felt like it was less to take care of. It was easier to clean. You know, there were a lot of positives for me. So now I know, I try to translate that to my life here. And also I really learned some good business skills from them. They are hustlers. In the marketplace, I learned how to negotiate in Turkish. I learned all the numbers so that I can get the best deal, and they love a good negotiation. And it was fun. It was
That's great.
Fun.
That's
and
great.
You can sell anything. So, you know, any entrepreneur, you want to know how to sell something, go to another country and practice on the street.
This is why I absolutely hate car dealers, you know, because the haggling, man. Oh my God, it's so exhausting for me.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think I need an intensive like haggling course in Turkey.
Well, how you interpret it? I think here we kind of interpret. Well, it depends how it's done, but you know,
you can have fun with it.
Yeah, I respect it more now. Like
That's
people,
nice.
Whatever they have, they use that resource and try to sell it to make some money for their families, right? There's people who sell like pomegranate juice and orange when it's in season, and they sell it because they grow it in their yards.
Wow.
And I think these, you know, it makes you think, what do I have at home that I can sell? What do I have at home that I can use for a business? You know, it makes you think deeper. Sometimes we're so like disconnected to what we have, and we're always looking on the computer and the TVs and this and that. It keeps us very disconnected from what's real that we can use to make a business, to make you know, something creative. And when I was there, I did more artwork. I took art classes. You know, I think I was just more in touch with the earthy things. You know, does that make sense? Like,
like something real, right? You know, like your father taught you, you know, like do those things that add to you, whether it's travel or education. And now you take that with you. It's enriched you, right? Rather something that you consumed and it's gone forever, right? And really
I felt more connected. And when I came back, I kind of looked around and I was like, what can I do with what I have? You know, is there a different, maybe I can add on a new business service to my current business. Maybe I can open up something completely new. Maybe I can help a friend, give them some ideas, because it just made me think way more out of the box. Because, you know, for a lot of people, it's survival, right? And in this day and age with COVID and everything, and people are racking their brains, what can I do? What can I do? Look around you, turn the TV off, you know, think, what resources do I have? The rest of the world is really using the resources in ways that are really creative. And you know, I'll be the first one to say that I was blind to a lot of that, thinking
Yeah.
like, I just have to
We
do
all are. Yeah.
something, and you know,
Every country, every individual, we all have narratives that we tell ourselves, right? Things that we tell ourselves. And like you said, having an experience overseas, and this is why immigrants are an incredible asset to this country. They see the world, they see what we have in a new way, and they understand how to use it and utilize it. And
yes,
that's the power of like modern day immigrants, right? And why a healthy society should always have immigration. It's vital.
Like the beauty of America too. Like you just, I mean, I'm not far from the Mexico border. If you go to over the border and come back in the same day, you're going to have a new perspective on what you have here and say, okay, look, there's so many valuable resources. What can I do? That's why they work hard, because they understand that, whoa, this is a lot. This is a lot, and they can do something really good with this, with these resources, people, opportunities, books, education. It's not available everywhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I have a friend here too. He's commenting. He's saying that he loves the Turkish business school that you went through, and for him, actually, he went to Mexico, and he brought actually American hustle to Mexico because he saw things that they didn't see there that they had, right?
Like what?
I can't remember the exact business. Like, it's kind of like I'm blanking on that right now. But he saw a way, like they weren't doing something that it was common, like for him, common sense. And he's like, well, why don't we just create this kind of business? And so, quickly his business grew because he understood how to make it happen, and he brought that experience from America. So it can go in the reverse direction as well.
It does. I saw that in Turkey as well. I saw a lot of kids on their phones and Instagram and Facebook, and at first I'm getting a chuckle like, oh, that's Silicon Valley people that made that, and it's over here in this small town in Turkey. That's so fascinating. But wait, these kids could be making businesses on Instagram and Facebook, but they're not. So maybe there's a gap there that I could help them, fill. Like I think it gets your mind going when you just get out of your comfort zone. Wherever it is,
not just fatal to prejudice. It's it inspires entrepreneurship and opportunity. Perspective, right? So much. Travel is incredible. It's powerful.
It does. You really, I feel like alive is what the word I probably use.
I love that. I love that.
Alive. Time to go somewhere again.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, the next trip you take, you have to come back again. But okay, so there's two more things I want to discuss before you leave. The first is actually, because I want to start something new. I kind of brought this up with you at the beginning before we started. I've been wanting to do something to connect our guests, to share people's lives and experiences, their diverse lives, diverse experiences. Like, what could be a fun way? So I was chatting with Pick, and I was kind of explaining this to her. I want to do something interesting. I want to get some essence of the person, and I want to connect these different interviews. What do you have any inspiration, any ideas? And she's a creative person, so we just had a friend, like one of her friends, and actually somebody she works with on a regular basis. He's Brazilian, and so he recently sent us a box of Brazilian snacks. And it's fascinating. It's like something that, we're completely have no experience with, right? Well, some of the stuff, like they had chocolates, but it had its own unique twist, right? They had this like kind of peanut bar thing, which is also quite delicious, but had its own unique twist. And some juices that were like we'd never tasted before, a soda we'd never tasted before, some snacks, like these like almost like chip like snacks. But again, very unique flavor, nothing we'd ever tasted before. Like that's really cool, and this can go really well or really bad. So I'm curious to see how it ends up. So I want you to pick. You're going to be our first victim. Well, actually, the victim will be the next person, like depending on how you picked your snack. I want you to pick a snack, something either you grew up eating, something that's not perishable, something that you love and that you would like to share with somebody else. Okay, so either from your, like I said, childhood or your ethnic background. And so, what did you pick?
So I bought these for myself because they're a little bit of self-love and care, but the Ferrero Rochers right now. They're just little chocolates with hazelnut that I grew up with. I mean, they're popular now in the U.S., but when I was growing up, you only got these if somebody came from Italy, and they're kind of crunchy, a little bit crunchy chocolate balls, and inside there's a hazelnut filling, and so it's kind of like Nutella inside. But
yep, I love it.
I love them. I mean,
introduce me to them.
Yeah, and people seem to like them now too. But for me, when I look at them, I just think of those days when my aunt used to fill the suitcase with these and bring them. They were such a treat. We didn't have them in the stores, so
that's a beautiful memory.
Yeah.
Well, so the next guest, I'm gonna send that to them.
Okay.
And during the show, at some point, we will eat them and we will decide whether we like it or not. And what we think of it. And so, if hopefully you can tune in and you can, enjoy our reaction to your recommendation. All right.
So circle back to me so I get someone else's next then, because I'm not
exactly. That's why you have to come back now. So it's not fair that you don't get to enjoy something, right? So, and I feel bad for all the original guests. I have to bring them back again too, just so they can be part of this.
All your first timers.
But thank you for doing that. And I want to end because you did something interesting, right? I mean, you've traveled to all these different countries, and in your writing, in what you do, you really try to connect people, right? You have your Italian and Puerto Rican roots and those recipes and those delicious dishes you grew up with, and you try to share those with Muslims, and vice versa. Those delicious dishes you've learned from Muslims, and the ingredients we use, you share that with everyone, every non-Muslim out there, right? And that's a really beautiful thing. And so the latest thing you've done is also really incredible, that you are bringing back a bit of turkey. And can you talk more about that?
Well, I have two things to tell you. I guess the second thing I didn't tell you on the phone because it's just a totally new thing I could talk about. But yeah, so for those of you who may already know my website, we had a store that was kind of separate, but now we attached it to My Halal Kitchen. So you can get like halal ingredients and all kinds of different food products. But I wanted to expand into the home area too, because home is so important to me, and like I'm always looking for that spot that means a lot to me, and Turkey really has been that spot, in particular the southern part. And so I was lucky enough to find somebody who helps me curate these handmade wool carpets and kilims. And for those of you who don't know, this is a very old tradition in Turkey to make carpets from sheep's wool. And anybody who watches Ertuğrul will know this, because you see it in all the series. Women are making the carpets and they're dyeing them with all natural dyes. So we're able to now sell these, and they're all very unique. They're very old, but they're taken care of, cleaned and repaired if there's anything. But they have different designs in them, and they're dyed with things like pomegranates, with onion, with so nothing is chemical. And the philosophy is also that there's a certain barakah or blessing, because when the sheep were sacrificed for meat, nothing was wasted. And so the wool is actually, so the whole animal was used. And so I believe there's a certain like energy with these items, and they have lived on and on. So for me, it's not just like bringing a product to sell. It's something that keeps this thing alive. It goes into another set of good hands in a home that will appreciate and take care of it. And you have a piece of turkey with you. You have a piece of something that was made by hand, which is just not done anymore. So myhalalkitchen.com/shop, and then if you go down to home decor, you'll see those. We're adding more all the time as we get them, but they're sort of one by one, because we're looking for them. So they're not just mass produced at all.
That's incredible. That's beautiful. And like, you've been talking about how you like the earthiness and the pure and organic. And this is an excellent example of that. I mean, connecting human beings, something made by a human being for a human being, and that purchase benefits somebody directly. That's really powerful. That's awesome.
And it goes to the women, it goes to the people who are, helping find them. And also, so to add on to that,
Mhm.
I wasn't confirmed really too much before, but I think
Mhm.
soon we'll be able to put information out. But I think we'll be able to meet people who want to come to Turkey for cooking classes and a tour. So we're trying to put together a tour in
Awesome.
Fethiye this summer.
Awesome.
Travel restrictions,
Yeah.
depending on that, and vaccines, but we're preparing that if that's possible, that
Yeah.
we'll be announcing up to 14 spots only to make it a very unique thing. But we'll have
Wow.
cooking classes, and we'll go to the kilns where the women are making the rugs, and we'll go
Wow.
to see the goats and the sheep and all the things that I just
Wow.
love about this place. So
Wow.
hopefully we'll be able to then, bring people to the place that I've been talking about for so long.
Wow. And I think somebody can't wait. Mitro's asking, do you have cooking classes virtual cooking classes?
I've lately in the past 2 weeks, I've gotten so many requests. So yes, I am putting something together.
Okay.
So make sure if you either just message me on my Facebook page or get on my newsletter,
Okay.
and then subscribe at myhellokitchen.com/contact.
Okay.
Then I'll add you to the list because again, that's going to be a limited class too, because I'll do Zoom for a while until we can get a course together. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Exciting stuff. You have to, you have to hit me up when you have that trip to Turkey again. That'd be awesome.
You guys gotta come. You gotta bring the kids and come. They will love it.
We really, Pick and I have been dying to go to Turkey for a long time.
Yeah, you have to, and I have to be there when you come so I can show you my spots. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing.
Congratulations on your show. You're awesome. Great job. I loved it.
No, it's awesome guests like you who make it so easy, but thanks for joining us. And, those people who are interested, please go to myhellokitchen.com and subscribe and stay up to date on all the things that Yvonne's doing, all the exciting things. Have a great evening. All right. Hopefully we'll see you back soon.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.